That's Antonio Brown without his uniform.
So much AJ. Oh, the ball came out, and another fumble recovery.
Oh,
Jefferson.
And then Jefferson's so mad. Oh!
In fantasy football, we call them league winners all year long. But in the final week, one bad game from a superstar doesn't just hurt, it haunts you to your core forever.
And it lobs it. It's a long touchdown.
That kid's amazing. There is no way. Puts it in. Next by one.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to our series Top 5, where we dive deep into the history of sports. I'm your host, George, from Valley Sports Pod, the fastest rising podcast today. And this is the Top 5 Fantasy Football Championship busts since 2010. Before we get our third edition of our Top 5 series started, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow at Valley Sports Pod. Comment down below what you want to see next in our Top 5 series. Let's get it started.
It's the lowest number of receptions in his career.
Number 5.
And that's a guy who never has a game like this.
Coming in at number 5, in 2023, Travis Kelce wasn't just a tight end, he was a first-round necessity. Despite missing week 1 with a knee injury, he spent the rest of the year as the clear-cut tight end 1, averaging nearly 15 points per game in PPR. He was the only player at his position commanding a 25% target share, and his chemistry with Mahomes was the only constant in a shaky Chiefs wide receiver core. Coming off a midseason stretch where he dropped 179 yards against the Chargers and 124 against the Broncos, Kelce entered Week 17 as a cheat code that managers relied on to provide a massive positional advantage over their opponents. However, the stage was set for a championship celebration against a Cincinnati Bengals defense that arrived at Kansas City ranked dead last in the NFL against tight end position. It was the ultimate smash spot, but instead of a vintage Kelce performance, the Bengals bracketed him perfectly, and the Chiefs' offense looked out of sync. Kelce was targeted only 4 times, his lowest margin of the entire season. He finished with a soul-crushing 3 catches for 16 yards. For a player who is essentially locked for 60 yards and a handful of catches, this 4.6 point floor in Week 17 of the finals left managers with a massive hole in their lineup that no waiver wire could possibly fill. Their first-round pick crushing a lot of championship teams across America. Most people going into that 2023 season took Kelce in the first round and were left speechless when their first-round pick in the championship week came up with 4.6 points. As one of the managers who lost in the finals that year, Kelce, I don't know what happened that week, but there's not much to add. It's just when you go into a week where you need a huge week from your first-round pick and he's going against the worst team versus his position and he drops under 5, you're left with a lot of questions that are unanswered. What happened that day? Not much. Not much.
It's the lowest number of receptions in his career.
Number 4.
And that's a guy who never has a game like this.
Stephon Diggs started 2023 on an absolute fireball. Through the first 9 weeks, he was a top 3 wide receiver, posting 5 100-yard games and looking like Josh Allen's only trusted target. Even as the Buffalo offense changed coordinators, Diggs was the only player everyone assumed would get his. In the playoffs, he entered the final as a locked-in wide receiver 1 with over 100 catches on the season, a player you simply could not bench. Then came the Week 17 final against New England, a team he usually dominates against. Bill Belichick did what he does best. He took away the opponent's best weapon. Diggs was frustrated all afternoon, finishing with only 4 catches for 26 yards and 0 touchdowns. His 6.6 PPR points was his lowest output in years. If you made it to the final with Diggs, you likely lost because of him, as it turned into a performance that was virtually impossible to overcome. Another one of those years where he started out so hot, and then once they changed coordinators, they completely fell off as an offense. I remember that season, they were just going into the playoffs. Everyone knew that they were ready to crash and burn, and lo and behold, they lost again to the Chiefs that year. So a year where Diggs looked like he was going to run away with the receiving title, everything just fell apart once the Bills changed coordinators. Unbelievable.
It's the lowest number of receptions in his career.
Number 3.
And that's a guy who never has a game like this.
Entering the 2025 Fantasy Championship, Jahmyr Gibbs was arguably the most explosive weapon in the league. He was a touchdown machine, entering Week 17 with over 1,100 rushing yards and an NFL record where he delivered another 22 points to help fantasy managers get to their title. Gibbs was viewed as a bulletproof RB1 who could win you your matchup on a single play. Week 17 came, the holiday turned into a nightmare. 5 years after Alvin Kamara delivered a 6-touchdown performance of win championships around the globe, Christmas Day for Jahmyr Gibbs in Minnesota was a nightmare. Facing a Vikings defense that sold out to stop the run, Gibbs was hitting the backfield on nearly half of his touches, averaged a miserable 2.4 yards per carry, and for the first time in the entire 2025 season, he coughed up and lost a fumble in the second quarter. The Lions offense struggled with 5 total turnovers, and Gibbs was never able to find the explosive lanes that defined his season. he finished with just 6.4 PPR points, his lowest output of the year, leaving his managers to watch their championship dreams vanish under a tree of interceptions and stalled drives. Yeah, this year was really weird for Gibbs. He turned into every other week man, where one week he dropped 30 and the next week he dropped under 10. And the Lions can't seem to find a way to consistently use him this year. Maybe it was just the loss of Ben Johnson, or Dan Campbell is just losing it as a coach. Who knows? But Lions have got to find something to fix everything, because they just went from 15 wins to under 10 this year and are going to miss the playoffs for the first time in a couple of years. Not a good sight.
It's the lowest number of receptions in his career.
Number 2.
And that's a guy who never has a game like this.
Arian Foster was the number 1 pick for a reason. In 2012, he was a touchdown machine. Entering Week 16 with 1,300 plus yards and 15 scores, he was the most consistent workhorse in the league, a player who almost guaranteed you a win if he was healthy. In the Week 16 title game, Foster looked ready to go, but after 10 carries for 15 yards, a fumble, and only 2 catches for 14 yards, he left the game early with an irregular heartbeat. But since he was active and started and played enough downs, he was locked in your lineups and he finished with a putrid 2.9 PPR points. It remains one of the gold standards for championship busts, a healthy superstar who gave you nothing on the day it mattered the most. Yeah, Arian Foster was the gold standard for running backs back then, man. He had a 4-year stretch of just dominance. He was McCaffrey before McCaffrey, he was Gurley before Gurley, he was Bell before Bell. If you don't know the legend of Arian Foster, just look up some highlights. This guy was insane. He was the type of player where if you played against him, you were begging for under 25. Barely. That's how good this guy was. He was just unbelievable. A dual threat that the likes we haven't seen in a long time, besides like Christian McCaffrey and, again, Todd Gurley. Insane player. But just to get that little points from him in the championship week is the second worst we've ever seen.
It's the lowest number of receptions in his career.
Number 1.
And that's a guy who never has a game like this.
Justin Jefferson's 2022 season was one of the greatest receiver seasons we've ever seen. He entered Week 17 chasing 2,000 yards, sitting on 1,756 on 123 receptions. He was the undisputed number 1 overall fantasy asset, a player who provided a 20-point floor almost every single week. He was the reason managers were in the championship in the first place. Heading to Lambeau Field in a divisional matchup against a team 16 weeks prior, he dominated for 35-plus points. Jair Alexander physically erased him from the field. He played nearly every snap, was targeted only 5 times, finishing with 1 catch for 15 yards. That 2.5-point total is a scar on the history of fantasy football. The best player in the world putting up a score that a backup kicker could beat. This will forever remain the worst championship bust. The number 1 player gave you 2.5 points when it mattered the most and killed fantasy dreams across America. I still haven't forgiven you, Justin Jefferson, for what you've done to me. That was the worst day ever. Ever. So thank you for that, Justin Jefferson. You know, doing lists like this bring up horrible, painful memories. And as someone who's been doing fantasy for over a decade, that still is one of the worst losses I've ever experienced. Justin Jefferson, the guy who I was the biggest fan of, was so happy to take him at 3rd overall. And championship week, he gives me a 2.5-point dud against a team he put up 35 against 16 weeks prior, and just put a blemish on my history. What an embarrassment that was. Embarrassing, Justin Jefferson. And you top this list for the worst performances in the championship of fantasy football for all time since 2010. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the top 5 fantasy championship busts since 2010. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow at Valley Sports Pod. Thank you, everyone. Comment down below what you want to see next on our top 5 series. Check out episode 20 of Valley Sports Pod. It was a very funny one, recorded here in my apartment. This is George for Valley Sports Pod. God bless and have a great time. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. Take care.